So this is the sequel to, I think it was 2021's Extraction, the action movie starring Chris Hemsworth as mercenary or extractor Tyler Rake, who in the first movie he has to go into a dangerous situation setting and extract people from it, and he has to do the same thing in this one. At the end of the first movie, he appears dead. We see him at the beginning of Extraction 2 being kind of washing up on shore, getting rescued, getting to a hospital, having
He's
surgery.
still breathing.
Yeah,
I don't believe it. Yeah.
having surgery, getting the physical therapy. He's back. He's healed. He gets a mysterious meeting with Idris Elba, who shows up for one of two very small scenes and said, "We got another job for you, Tyler. Come back out." And he ends up getting wrapped up in a new mission to extract his ex-wife's sister and their family from a Georgian prison, that he has to go in and extract them, which he does, which you've seen a lot of the action things, a lot of big set pieces. Eventually some things go wrong, some things go right. Eventually the bad guys come after him, even though that mission is largely successful. Just a bunch of action. The plot line doesn't matter, and it really doesn't. Like they don't even try. It's all about the action. But I was saying, in the '90s, in a '90s action film, you had to have interesting characters, like in The Rock, or Face Off or Con Air. Like you had to have really memorable personalities and actors playing those personalities to get you through the slow bits. You had to have some really good. And it seems like in Extraction 2, they don't really care. There's some weak scenes about family and this and that, but it's all about the action scenes, which go on kind of forever. But before I talk too much, Zach, what'd you think?
Yeah, so we saw Extraction originally here on the show in 2020, and both of us were pretty lukewarm on it. The action's great, but the plot is real mid. But the setting was interesting. It wasn't a bad feature. Chris Hemsworth was dead at the end of it. Not anymore, baby. Extraction 2, he's back, and I'll drop it. I'm sorry. I know it's a stupid point to hang my hat on because it's an action movie, right? And ultimately, Andy's right. The plot doesn't really matter. The movie I thought a lot about while I was watching this was John Wick 4, because I hadn't seen any John Wick movies before that one. I've tried to watch John Wick 1 a couple times. It hasn't really worked out for me. But John Wick 4 is a beast, and I need to go back and watch them all since it's a really fun time. And John Wick 4 does the same thing Mad Max Fury Road does. It basically makes your whole movie one long action sequence with short intervals in between. And Extraction 2 doesn't have that luxury. Does that make it a bad movie? No. But in a movie where the plot isn't really all that important, you're really just there for the awesome action sequences, which are aplenty in Extraction 2. It just makes it slow. That's the bit you're getting up and going to the bathroom. You know what I mean? When the action scene's wrapped and they're on to a new country and they're in the headquarters and they're on their phones and they're like, well, who's going to get the code? We got to get the thing to the plate. You just don't care. And it's just not well put together. But on the other side of that is the action, which for Netflix, probably this has got to be, I think, probably the best original, as far as action goes, as far as the actual stuff happening on screen, probably their best swing at an action movie so far. It's got some pretty great sequences in it. They're really, really fun and very oriented and physical and loud. Sam Hargrave returns to direct this one, and he definitely tries to take it further than the last one, including one incredible action sequence in the opening act that we kind of have to talk about. I don't know if you can talk about this movie without it, really.
Yeah, there is a long, about 20, 25 minute action sequence.
I think it was 30 something. Yeah, it's long.
Yeah, and it follows this whole thing with them arriving at this Georgian prison. They kind of have to break in, locate the family, break and fight their way out, and then continue. And then they are pursued, and they have to fight off bad guys the whole way. They eventually end up on a train. It kind of goes on for way too long. I don't know. John Wick manages to make this interesting because they have very long action sequences as well, but they keep it fresh enough to where you never get bored. I was like, when is this going to be over? It also feels like filmed by algorithm where it's front loaded. This big action sequence in Act 1 is what you would normally see at the climax of an action film. But it feels like they know that, well, the algorithm's going to say that people just watch the first half, so we'll load up everything in the first half. You would never do that in a real movie that you release to theaters.
Yeah, there's a brutal conversation actually just for the first act action sequence kicks off where they talk about TikTok, and one character's like, "You shouldn't be on that." And I'm like, "Oh God!" Like, yeah, it feels like they're like, "We gotta hit the Gen Z market. They'll love this. The kids just coming out of college, they're gonna think it's the greatest thing ever." Like, sure, man. I think one of the things John Wick does really well, as opposed to this, is when John Wick is slow, because it does have beats where there isn't action. Number one, all your characters are functionally caricatures. Like, they're really unique. It's similar to the Wes Anderson Guess Who thing, right? Every character in John Wick is really unique, has a really unique silhouette, unique voice. Like, there's something special about them, and they're very simple. Half of them you don't even know their names, right? Like, the villain will have some weird name, like the Chancellor, or they'll be going to a location called like the High Table, right? Like, and in this movie, and also John Wick, number two, is gorgeous to, yes, and two, it's gorgeous to look at. Like, every setting they're in is the coolest setting ever, and every suit they're wearing is the coolest they've ever looked in a suit. Like, the lighting's amazing. It always looks rad. Extraction 2 does not have these luxuries. It makes for slow in-betweens. But that opening sequence, I do want to talk about that, because I think it's probably... shamelessly probably the best action sequence in the movie. I really wondered absolutely. At the end of it, wow, I wonder how they're going to top that in the third act. And like, I don't think they do. I think it's probably
it's
the
front
best.
Loaded.
I do think it's front loaded.
It's front loaded for the algorithm, absolutely. Yes. And one of the things that I recognize is that this budget is very different from the first film. I think the first film is a better action movie because they are on location. They're in India. They are choreographing these things through buildings and things there. This movie is clearly, they're just on sets places. Like, they're never in a real city. There's a lot of really questionable CGI. They're not on location. And you know this because Netflix has really cut back on a lot of their production budgets. There's been a lot of cuts in spending for content there. Recently, and I feel like you can really see it in this movie. Like I said, they're nondescript indoor places that could be anywhere, and a lot of it is just these are sound stages.
It's true. Additionally, in regards to the editing, in any of the long take action sequences, which were really common in Extraction 1, I think it's one of the things that helped it stand out. There are cuts, obviously, but they try to hide them. And in your longest sequence, like the 30-minute one, which is really solid, like they're pretty obvious. And like after a while, I'm reminded of like what Guillermo del Toro said about stop motion animation. Like, stop motion movies are cool because you can see the way they're made. You can see all the imperfections like in the frames as it moves. And when you start to watch a 30-minute action sequence and you start to see the cuts, even though they're trying to be hidden, like it pulls you out of it in a way, right? Like, you're not really there with Tyler Rake, like pounding on people. You're sitting on your couch watching Netflix and you're like, oh yeah, my phone just buzzed. I should see what's going on. It's not that it breaks attention. I really like that sequence, but it does get to be a little too much, especially in the car section of it, where it's genuinely nauseating. Too much camera shake and too many hidden cuts and too much CGI to hide the cuts. It's too much. Like, it doesn't... But I think I'd rather be excess. That's worth saying. Like, for Extraction 2, I think this is a better evolution on Extraction 1, for better or worse. And I think whatever they do next, whatever Sam Hargrave does next, if he takes the skill set and uses what he learned here and tunes it in a bit more, like, I think we would get something really special. And in that way, I think I'm excited for the next one because I'm sure they're making another. Like, I feel like Netflix has got a little bit of something here, right? They got a little bit of heat. They should hang on to it and make a third one. Hopefully they don't cancel it.
Well, it's like they figured out how to do this kind of a little bit cheaper, I think, which is going to help. And it was allegedly one of their most watched things.
Yeah.
Like I said, I just feel like you can see the seams a whole lot more. Would probably work a little bit better on the big screen. That kind of helps hide a lot of it. But like I said, a lot of it, you can tell you're not on a location. A lot of the none of the explosions are real. A lot of the gunfire, like you can tell a lot of the bullet holes are CGI. The gunfire is CGI. Like, it's just, it's like animation at this point. And it was, eventually I was just so bored. Like, after that initial action sequence that wraps up at about the first hour, it was just like I could not get through the rest of it fast enough.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. Like, it just starts to feel like it drags. But I think in that way, front loading it is smart. A quick mention for the cast: Chris Hemsworth's a lot of fun. I think, dude, I'm hard pressed to think of a Chris Hemsworth performance I don't enjoy. Like, it's kind of nice to see him not even like take a swing at comedy, right? Because so often I think he gets pulled into that space because he's got some decent chops. No Thor here. Like Tyler Rake is like no nonsense. Nothing is funny ever. Everybody is going to die kind of character. He's a lot of fun. His two sidekicks, one whose name I absolutely cannot pronounce. You want to take a swing at it, Andy? Do you?
Golshifte Farahani.
Farahani and Adam Besa are both a lot of fun. Like understated. Our villain, Tornike somebody's gonna be upset with me on the internet. He's actually not bad.
Yeah.
Yes, he's actually not bad either. He's got the scar on his face. Not the most intimidating, but like again, you're not really there for like the players. You're there for the heat. Like you want the smoke, and if you want to see Chris Hemsworth to shoot a helicopter out of the sky with an LMG
on a moving
Extraction
train.
2 is on a moving train. 28 minutes after an insane action sequence, like it's the movie for you, baby. Like I think it's accessible. It's available for people at home. Like as far as streaming goes, like I think it's a pretty good offering. But maybe that's for recommendations. Anything else before we get there?
I think that scar on that guy's face is CGI. Even I don't even think it's like a real.
Really?
Yeah, a couple of times I was watching it, I was like, that just looks like that's pasted on afterwards.
Maybe. I mean, I'm sure that happens from time to time. I know Chris Hemsworth is covered in scars. I'm sure some of those are spliced in. In fact, it's funny. There's this one conversation he has with a kid in the middle of it when things are slow. When he's talking to this kid, and he's got this cut on his face, and the cut is like right in the center of the frame, and it's like bright red, and I'm like, ew. Every time it cuts back, I'm like, I don't want to see that. Like, I know it's prosthetic or whatever, but like, gross. Get that out of here. Good Lord. Like, put Band-Aid on that.
I also mentioned that I had to resubscribe to Netflix for this, but I resubscribed to the ad tier, which is only $7.
Yeah.
And in 1080p, so I watched this in glorious 1080p.
And how far you've fallen.
Which looks okay for the most part until there's a lot of motion and it starts to look blurry, or there's a lot of like dark, like if there's a lot of blacks, like a nighttime scene, like the blacks start to look pixelated.
That's right. Color crush.
Oh yes. Yeah. So it was what the film deserved, though. I didn't feel like I was missing out.
Good. I'm glad you didn't feel like you were missing out. Andy, would you recommend Extraction 2?
I would not. I would say hard pass. It's way too long. It's full 2 hours. It is boring as the daylight. To me, the action gets boring after a while. 25, 30 minutes is a really long time for an action scene. They would do better to break that up more, have a better midpoint and climax to work towards, and also spend some time developing some personality in your character. So hard pass for me.
I would recommend with caveats, actually, not a hard pass. If you need to turn your brain off, right? Like you don't care. You got a long summer afternoon and you want to take a nap or something. Like you just need something to lull you off to sleep. Or, I don't know, maybe you want to have a snack and watch something on Netflix and you want to, see something that's not bad. Like Extraction 2 is exactly the fare you're looking for, right? Like it is harmless, I think, in its presentation because it's just mindless. Like you don't think a lot about it. You don't need to see the first one. You're not missing anything. They cover it in flashback at the open. Like it's fine. Like, yeah, I could see my dad watching this, right? Like just throw it on. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, maybe it'll be fine. And then you're charmed by an action sequence that's not bad, like I think it's not bad. I think I'm a little spoiled by things like John Wick 4, like that have really perfected the formula of like,
exactly.
Hey, little drama, little exciting drama, and then large action. Like that's the stuff. Like it just makes for a better action movie. Like this movie feels like if it had come out 15 years ago, it would have been all the heat. But like we're past that now. Like it's like Xbox 360 era action movie.
John Wick is a great example of because in the slower parts they have a lot of drama. They have really colorful characters,
great visuals,
personalities right. that you're not going to forget. Yeah, that's shot on location at all these very expensive places around Paris. In John Wick 4, they shoot it at the Louvre, the Arc de Triomphe, Sacré-Cœur, like all these famous places in Paris. They're shooting on location, and that helps it. And like Extraction 2 is like shot in Netflix's backyard.
Yeah, it's true. Like anytime I see a softbox like scene now, right, where everybody's in like soft shadows and even lighting, I'm like, studio, That's a stage. Like, I don't care where you're. I don't care. Like, you could be hanging off the side of a building. I tell you, it's a studio, but whatever. Andy, you got any plans for the 4th? I got plans. I'm going out of town. So we're not doing the show next week. But what you around? What's going on?
I'm going out of town as well, but we will be back with a show on July 11th, and we will be covering Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, which comes out this Friday, June 30th, in theaters only. And then we're also going to be watching Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, which comes out July 11th. We're going to be doing the show the day that movie comes out, because we got some early tickets to that. By the way, I dare anyone to write the title for Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 and not mess up the punctuation.
Yeah, hit us in the comments if you think you know how to do it, because I'm telling you, it's more complicated than you'd think. It's going to be a blowout July. I know I said it earlier. Dude, July is going to be insane. We're taking next week off, taking a break, eating a couple hot dogs by the lake. After that, it's Mission Impossible and Indiana Jones. After that, it's Barbie and Oppenheimer, which is insane. The event of the summer. Cultural event of 2023.
Barbenheimer.
Barbenheimer. That's why all the kids are saying it.